Bonjour à toutes et à tous, je suis content de vous retrouver pour une nouvelle vidéo autour de notre thème favori. Aujourd'hui, je suis avec William Lee Rand qui va nous présenter son parcours spirituel, ce qui l'a amené à faire du Reiki. Hi William, it's such an honor to be with you today. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Gautier. Yes, it's wonderful to be here.
I'm so happy to introduce you to my viewers, to my French viewers. They all want to know a lot of things about your life. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your spiritual journey. How did you, what did you, what bring you to Reiki? How did you start this spiritual journey?
What happened, I was in high school. I was going to graduate, become an adult, and I started thinking about what do adults do. And then I started to realize, well, actually, it seems easier than being a high school student because you have just fewer things to do. But then I started thinking about life itself and what's our potential? What can we really do? So then I started going to a hypnotherapist because I was having trouble sleeping. And with that, though, I learned self-hypnosis, and I was able to go into a very deep level of self-hypnosis and give myself positive suggestions. And then when I would come back out, I would have this new positive state of mind.
Whoa.
So I found it to be quite powerful and very helpful. I experimented with that, tried different things and so forth. One of the keys that worked for me very well was simply to go very deep and to repeat the phrase, I am successful, hypnosis. And so I began to understand the power of the mind. And then I began reading about the Rosicrucians and the Rosicrucian order. And they're an organization that teaches metaphysical principles. And they're about religion and philosophy, metaphysics, healing, spiritual development, and so forth. And so what they do is they have these small booklets that they send out. And you use one each week. And it's about religion, philosophy, meditation. And then they have what they call experiments, where you do things to develop your ability with metaphysics. And so I began getting their monographs, as they call them, their booklets, and I began to learn a great deal about metaphysics.
Okay.
And so that was when I was 21. Now, I wanted to join earlier, but they said you could join at 18, but you have to have your parents' permission. My parents would not give me permission to do it. So I had to wait. And right when, on my 21st birthday, I joined right away, boom. And they started getting the lessons. And my parents were very dismayed because they thought, oh, we talked him out of it. But no, I was just waiting. So then I got the booklets and started practicing. And very powerful exercises and quite a lot of interesting information. And then I learned that there was a local lodge or chapter where I was living in Detroit. And so I started going to their meetings and meeting people that are involved. And then things really got better because I could talk to people who already were practicing in metaphysics and healing and meditation and all that.
Really?
And so that was just really wonderful to have that connection.
Oh.
And around that time, too, I had somewhat of an interest in astrology. So I had my astrology chart done, and also I had my own business. So I was selling racing parts for motorcycles.
Okay.
And I used to race motorcycles too, and so I was involved with that. And then I moved out I was in my parents' basement, moved out, got my own house, got a place of business, and that got bigger and bigger. And then it was quite successful. But then I had an idea of maybe expanding. I took on a couple of partners thinking they would work just as hard as me, but they didn't. And so that led to the business not working too well. So then I decided I'm going to travel. So then when I was 28, that was in 1975, then I decided I'm going to take off and travel. So I began traveling around the US. But in the process of having this business, I learned different skills. I learned how to work with fiberglass. I could make molds and make fiberglass parts. I learned how to work in a machine shop with a drill press lathe and different things like that. So I had these skills. So I ended up going to Hawaii and traveled around the different islands. And there was a man there that had a fiberglass shop, and they made fiberglass boats. And I went to him, and he said I could be the foreman there, but only in 4 months. So
Yeah.
then he said, travel around, come back in 4 months. So then in that time, then I went to an astrology there in Hawaii and had my chart done. And she said, oh, there's this group of people. She didn't say too much about it, and you might be interested in them. Now, in the meantime, I'd already started to read about witchcraft,
Okay.
and that's actually something positive. It's not the negative thing that it has been
Oh, of course.
thought of, but there's positive things to it.
No, no.
And so
Today, there is a lot of people that think that witchcraft is a little bit negative, but it's also just about energy, I guess. So,
oh yeah, it's like
yes.
Western shamanism. Is
Yeah,
how I term it, Western
yeah. Thank
shamanism.
you. Thank you.
So
Very useful. This.
yeah, so I went to this group and I found out, oh, it's witchcraft, but I already had a positive orientation. And so then all the people there were involved with different things. And one person was into astrology. And so I started talking to him. And just by talking, I picked up astrology right away. And I was able to start doing charts. And so I became a professional astrologer fairly quickly.
Yeah, but that was your job. It was your job. So you left your previous job. You were not working with the motorcycle and stuff.
Yeah, I stopped working for the fiberglass company that made boats, and then I started doing. Once I learned astrology, I started doing astrology charts. So that's when I left.
Okay.
Started doing astrology charts,
Yeah.
and I moved in with another person in the coven, and so that was a lot of fun doing that. And then I eventually got my own house, and also what I did was I developed a special chart for astrology. Now in astrology, at your time of birth, the normal astrology chart looks at the positions of the planets at your time of birth. It's not just the sun sign, but it's all the planets, and each planet has something to do with a different part of your personality.
Oh yeah.
So you could read about the person's personality by doing their chart. And there's the signs, the houses, and so forth. So I was really good at that. Somehow I had like a natural ability. And then I developed a special chart called the transograph. Okay. Now, with astrology, you can read about the personality. But if you look at what are called the transits, which are the positions of the planets right now, you can actually tell what's going on in a person's life right now.
Okay.
And because they have a book that shows where the planets were in the past and where they'll be in the future, you can look at a person's past and see what had been happening in their past and look into the future and foretell their future. Okay. And so that was really interesting to me.
I guess.
And so I made a special chart so that all the information was in one place. Because usually what you do is you look at the natal chart and you can tell about the person's personality, but then you have to look in a book to look at all the numbers for where the planets are now and where they will be in the future. So I made a chart that had all of it in a chart, and I call it the transograph. So I'll show you a picture of it now.
Yeah, please. And are you still using this astrology chart today?
No, I have progressed, but this is what the transograph looks like.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can see actually around the outside are the signs of the zodiac.
Yeah.
And then the lines are, there's for the houses and the signs of the zodiac. And then the colorful lines are where the person's individual planets are located. Whoa. And then the wiggly lines are the transits. So these are the outer planets, and they have an influence on your life. And you can tell what's happening in the person's life by looking at the transits. Time starts in the middle and goes out. The rings are years. And so you can tell what's happening over a period of 7 years. Okay. And so I could do astrology and also see what's happening in the person's present and future, and all at once.
It's amazing. Yeah. You're like Einstein, William. You're like Einstein. I say this to my students because you created so much techniques in Reiki. Also in your previous USUI Tibetan Reiki, I'm still teaching this system. And we saw the Reiki moving meditation or the advanced Reiki meditation with the symbols, all the, you're like creating stuff. Yeah. Like Einstein.
Yeah. Yeah. I was doing this back then. And then what I did is I had one of these, only it was the size of a poster on my wall. And my roommate was doing a tarot card reading. And this person that was getting the reading saw this chart and he said, "Oh, you know, I know somebody that will be interested in this chart." So I gave her a copy. I had it rolled up. I gave her a copy. She took it. And then a few days later, I'm sitting in the apartment, and without really being fully aware, there was a pressure on this side of my body. And I wasn't too aware of it, but it moved to the front. And as soon as it moved to the front, I go, "Oh, what? What is this?" There was like a pressure. And so I made my mind very still, and I watched, and then it moved over here. And I thought, that's really happening, but what is it? I don't know. So then the woman called and she said, "Oh, that chart, I gave it to the friend of mine and he would like to meet you. And also he's a kahuna." Now, the Hawaiian kahunas are like the shamans of the Hawaiian culture. Yeah. And so what was happening, he was reading my aura. So I felt his presence in my aura on each side. He was looking from different directions at my aura to check out, you know, who I am.
He was doing this through distance? Through distance?
Through distance, yes. He was doing a reading on me without me knowing, you know, but I realized it because I could feel the pressure of his presence.
Okay, so
all
the thing is amazing. So you already had all this training before going to Reiki, huh? You already had the feeling of the energy, the aura, all this knowledge.
Yeah, and then yes, I was a Rosicrucian, so they taught all about things like that. So then I was ready for this. So then the kahuna wanted to meet me, so I go to his place, and he has a place where he does teaching and sessions. And he already knew all about me. He didn't have any questions for me at all because he had read my aura. And so he wanted to know, though, if I would do his astrology chart for him personally. And also he said he had students. And he could set me up with a room where I could read charts for his students and I would be paid. And he was wondering, you know, would you be interested in doing this? And he said, also, you can take my classes. So, well, a kahuna, you know, I heard about them, but here's a real kahuna, and he's asking me this, and he's wanting to know if I will do this. And inside, my energy is going, "Oh, yes, yes, yes." But then outside, I go like this. I go, "Yeah, I think I would like to do that."
Yeah, you have to do this kind of stuff. Yeah, of course. Okay.
So then I got to work with him. And I got the inside track because I learned what kahunas really do, because there's a lot of things they do they don't tell anyone about. And so I got to learn the whole thing. And I got his classes and all that. And then I became very good at doing astrology. And so that was a very powerful experience for me.
So you first taught astrology as a teacher, huh? You begin with all this.
Yeah, I began teaching astrology at that time too. I was already teaching astrology, and I had my transograph and the chart. I do astrology charts, but then I began working with a kahuna.
Yeah,
and then I got to take his classes, and he said something very interesting to me that was fascinating. Now I could feel energies around me. I didn't know too much about that, but he told me he could take any energy, any negative energy that comes toward him, capture it, make it positive, and add it to his supply.
Oh, I want to
know that. I thought, wow, that made me, I mean, I didn't even know, you know, he was so sophisticated. I thought, wow, that is amazing. So then I began working with him and learned a lot more about cutting cords and working with spirits and all kinds of things like that.
Whoa.
And so then I was also a hypnotherapist at that time too. And so what I did was I took everything I learned from the kahuna, I made it into a hypnosis tape. Now at that time, this is a long time ago, so they had cassette tapes for recordings. And then after that, they had CDs. Now they have streaming. So, you know, this is way back a long time ago in ancient times, you know. Yeah. So they had the cassette tape. So I made a cassette tape and it was called Spiritual Protection and Healing. And so what it did everything the kahuna could do, only with hypnosis. And so it would put a protective field of energy around the person, and then it would take any negative energy that came toward the person, make it positive, add it to the person's supply, cut cords to negative sources of influence, and do many other things for healing. So I created this, and I started selling it, and people really wanted it. And so that went over really well. Eventually it became a CD, and now we're doing it streaming. So we're now converting to streaming. So I think on our website, in fact, I think now you can buy a package and get all of this, what we're on CDs as streaming programs that you can come to your phone. So yeah, we have all those now. So anyway, I work with him and created this whole thing. Then what happened too is when I started using it, my life changed dramatically. Oh. And I realized that a lot of my problems weren't my own energies. They were negative energies coming from other people that were holding me back, like people who are jealous or concerned. And even my parents were born again Christians. I think they were praying for me that things would not go well, so I would go back to being a Baptist. So I think I got that too. So then suddenly everything cleared up because this was protecting me from these negative influences. So my life got better. I work with a kahuna like that. And after that as well, this is leading into the Reiki. So what happened was, now there was a man named Leonard Orr, and he developed something called rebirthing. And rebirthing is a breathing method that helps you go back to your first breath when you're born. Whoa. And the idea is when you're born and take your first breath, you form your opinion about life, about the world and everything. And often, though the baby is treated in a very painful kind of way, the baby's held upside down, the baby's spanked, so the baby starts crying and starts to breathe. Yes. So the baby thinks, oh, life is painful, you have to be punished to be alive. Okay. And so, and then it forms those are the foundation thoughts the baby has. Yeah. So with rebirthing, you go back to your first breath and you redo it in a positive environment. Okay. And so there was a week-long workshop on the Big Island of Hawaii, and I took it. And so in there were many, many people from all different backgrounds of meditation and healing and all sorts of things. Then Leonard would ask people to talk about their specialty. So one of the people stood up and she started talking about Reiki. Okay. Now I heard a little bit about it, but I didn't know too much. And she was a Reiki master. Yeah. And this was in 19.
Just excuse me. When was it? Which years?
1981.
1991. So just 1 year after Takata's death.
Oh yes, it was. Yes. So,
it's amazing.
Yes. So Takata passed on, and she was Bethel Fay was one of the masters that Takata trained, and so she stood up and started talking about Reiki. So what she was saying was all very interesting to me, and she said, well, basically Reiki is an energy that heals. You don't use your own energy, you use this energy you channel, because the healing I learned up to that point was your own energy. Yeah. With the kahuna, with the Rosicrucians, I learned how to do healing, but she said you don't use your own energy, it's a channeled energy. Okay. And she said also the energy guides itself. And she's saying these things and I'm thinking, wow, this is really something. And then she said, and you don't learn it in the usual way, but you receive an attunement. And so I'm thinking about all these ideas, but what the Rosicrucians said was they said, don't believe something just because someone says it's true, but learn from experience. Okay. So I'm thinking about those are wonderful. How can I learn from experience about this? How can I learn from experience? The next day she comes back and she says that there'll be enough free time during the rebirthing workshop for her to teach a level 1 Reiki class. And she wanted to know how many would like to take it. I thought, that's it. I can learn from experience by taking the class. I can see if this stuff really works. So I signed up, I got level 1, and lo and behold, I found out, wow, it was really powerful.
Okay.
And I had an amazing experience with the attunement, and then the energy worked so well. And I received and gave Reiki, and I thought this is much stronger than what the Kahuna was teaching, because with the Kahuna, you use your own energy. You're not very good at first, and over a matter of years, it takes to really get very good at it. But here, instantly, you're a healer. So,
but what was it completely new with all your spiritual background? You know, did you ever heard about such a techniques in others communities? Because I was wondering, this Reiki thing is very special. I only teach and practice Reiki, and I'm quite new.
Yes,
I've got 10 years experience. So, did you heard about this kind of similar techniques that it's not called Reiki, but that can be similar in other culture?
No.
No,
and Reiki was new. So this was just after Takata died. And so I heard something about it. I asked the Kahuna. Kahuna says, there's this old woman. And this was when Mrs. Takata was alive. And she said, there's this old woman here, and she teaches it's healing. But what we do is way better than that. So you don't have to go to her. Stay with me. I will show you how to be a healer. And so I missed out, because I didn't want to do that, because if he found out, which he would know psychically, then I would not be in good, get along with him very well. So I missed out learning from Takata. But then I got Bethel Faye. So then I got a level 1 class, and I was amazed. I thought, this is better than what the Kahuna is doing, and stronger, and works so well. And then very interesting thing happened for me at that class. This was on the Big Island. It was out in, I call you say the jungle, way out there. So I went for a walk by myself, and the sunlight was coming down through the bushes, and the energy spoke to me, and it said, this energy can be developed.
Yeah.
And I get it. The energy tells me this. And, but the way Bethel was teaching it is, no, you can't develop it. But you can take, go from level 1 to level 2, that will get stronger, and go to master, but you can't do anything to make it stronger. But the energy told me it could. So I believe the energy. So then the energy began to guide me. And that's the other thing. I got level 1, 81. Level 2, Bethel came to Honolulu, where I was living, and she asked if I could help her get students for her class. So I got quite a few, but the price was $500 for level 2. And that was like maybe $4,000 or $5,000 now,
okay.
With inflation. So it was way beyond my price range. I could not afford it, but I was willing to help her, get her class going. And so then she calls later and says, William, you got so many students for me. You can now have the class free. And I thought, that's fantastic. So back then, most people had just level 1 Reiki. That's all, because level 2 was so much money. Only a very few people got level 2. So I thought, I'm going to get level 2. So then she taught the class. I got level 2. I got the symbols. The energy was stronger. And then Bethel said something very, very meaningful too. She said, well, Reiki can heal very simple things and very complicated things. But also the most important thing is Reiki can guide you. It can guide your life.
Yeah.
And she said, everyone's born with a purpose, but most people forget what it is. But Reiki can help you remember your purpose and can guide you on your life path. And so I thought, wow, that's what I need, because I had been doing all these things, but it was more like random, and there was no pathway or anything. Yeah. So with that, I started saying a prayer to ask the Reiki to guide me. So I just said, guide me and heal me so that I might be of greater service to others. And I was asking to be guided. And then I changed it, guide me and heal me so that I might be of greater service to myself and others. Okay. And so after that, things shifted quite a bit. And so one night, I was living in what's called a plantation shack, and they built these small houses for plantation workers. And then the sugarcane fields, the city moved into the sugarcane fields, and they just had the small houses, and there were 3 of them, and I got to live in one. So I was in this plantation shack, which was considered a really cool thing. And I had my washer and dryer outside, and I shared it with the other people. So I was out getting my laundry. I look up, and the sky is perfectly clear, and you can see the stars way, like the depth of the universe is just like, and my whole consciousness is expanded with that. I go, wow, that's amazing. Then I go into my house, I'm standing in the living room, and there's a presence next to me. And one of the problems I had was, I was asking for guidance because I didn't quite know what to do. And there's a presence, and it's a being. And it says to me, there is a way for you. And when this being says that there is a way for you, I see in my mind's eye like this path going off into the distance. And I'm looking at it going, wow, And then the being says, but you can't just be aware of this. You have to decide if you want to accept this path, because this path has been created for you because you asked for guidance, and this path is available to you, but you have to decide if you want to accept it. So then I go, I'm thinking, yeah. So I just, formally go, yes, I accept this path. So then this was actually an angel. And so after that, things started changing. And I had to move out of my house. I moved around some. And then I took, Tony Robbins' workshop with he was teaching NLP.
Oh.
And a friend of mine moved to San Francisco, and he said I can come over and live with him. And then Tony was having a 2-week certification training in Phoenix. And I called my friend, it was $2,400. I didn't have the money or anything, but I called a friend of mine, and I was telling her about it because she had taken the Tony Robbins, beginning workshop with me. I was telling her about it, and I tell her it's $2,400. She says, "Are you going?" I go, "Well, I can't afford $2,400. And she said, "I'll loan you the money. Plus, I'll loan you extra $500 for expenses, and we can go together." She says, "Don't worry about it. She was like a movie star in Japan, and she made a whole bunch of money." She said, "This is what I do. I just help people do workshops if they want to. You need to pay me back at some point, but I can loan you the money." So we both went, and that was my plan. My plan then is go to Phoenix, take this workshop from Tony Robbins, move to San Francisco with my friend. So I did that, and I became certified in NLP, and that was pretty powerful. And he was doing
a big one, huh? By Tony Robbins, being certified by Tony Robbins, it's huge, huh? I'm also an NLP practitioner, just so
well, this was back when Tony Robbins was just getting started.
Oh,
he was 24 years old.
Oh my God!
But he projected that he was much older. Like he was he was older than everybody in the room, and he's the authority. So he did that, but nobody knew he was. Later, we found he was 24. Oh. Yeah, he was a pretty phenomenal guy, and he did the fire walk where you could walk on these burning coals. You don't get burned. And then I did that. That was very powerful. And then with the big one, the 2 weeks, and he had a 40-foot fire walk. And the coals were so deep, you actually sink into burning coals as you're walking. So I did that one too. And very powerful, and cleared up a lot of stuff. Like what happens is you write down your greatest fear on a piece of paper. You stand in front of the burning coals. You toss the paper in. It burns up. Then you walk across the coals, and then you don't get burned. And it's like fear into power. So your greatest fears change into personal power. So that was really, really something.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I moved to San Francisco with my friend, and he had one floor of an old rundown apartment building, and there were different people living there, and all kind of like hippies, would say. Yeah. And then, and then I did. I went to a psychic fair. I met this woman, and we got along really well as friends. And then what we did is we moved into our own place together. And she was very psychic, but she didn't have a lot of contact or ability to use her psychic abilities. So using my, I also learned how to do past life regression therapy. So as a hypnotherapist, I went in and took some classes on that. I was helping her to release anything that was blocking her from using her psychic abilities. And so she became very psychic. And then what happened, though, is I ran out of money. So I asked my parents if they could loan me $1,000. And a couple of weeks later, I talked to my mother. She says, "Oh, we can't loan you any money, but we have an idea that's way, way better than that. We have this fantastic idea." And I talked to your father. We have agreed on it. You can actually come back home and live with us. And my mother thought that was just the greatest thing they ever thought of. And of course, I'm going to want to do it. But I thought that's not, no, I'm not going to do that. I moved to get away from you guys. I don't ever want to go back there. And, but then I said a prayer asking, what should I do with this? And it said, give it a try. And I'm thinking, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean give it a try? What's that mean? Can't you give me more information? And so it said, meditate on that. So I meditated and give it a try. And what I realized is there's something there. And if I go there, I'm going to find out about it and I'll learn about it, but they're not going to be told what it is.
Was it Reiki that guided you at this moment? Was it Reiki?
Well, it was Reiki, yes, but it was my angel also.
Okay.
So my angel was working with me too. So I was on this, so I accepted this path, and then the path was to go back to Michigan. See, now I'm from Detroit, and I'm living, out in the west coast of California in San Francisco.
Yeah. Now,
who in their right mind would move from San Francisco to Detroit? If you know that much about, nobody, but see, that's where I'm from. Okay. So I thought, I'm going to go back there. I'm going to learn that lesson. I'm going to get out of there and go back to San Francisco or, Hawaii. So I did that. I came back. And what happened then, I lived with my parents. Then I moved out into a house where everybody practiced some sort of metaphysics. I started teaching classes. I developed spiritual development training. Based on working with the kahuna and all the other things I had studied. And so it involved past life regression therapy and healing and shamanism and all sorts of things like that. And I started writing for the local metaphysical paper. And so they showed me how to write. So the editors said, go ahead and do whatever you can and we'll fix it. So I looked at how they edited it and I became a better writer. And pretty soon they didn't have to edit anything. So I became a writer. I became a teacher. My classes were going really well. Yeah. And then what happened is I heard something about Reiki. Now in Hawaii, when I was told about the master level of Reiki, I was told it's $10,000.
I remember this is Takata's prices, huh?
Yeah, it was $10,000. And so I asked Bethel about it, and she says, now, don't try and talk me out of it. It's $10,000. I'm not going to change it. I said, I'm not trying to talk you out of it. Well, why is it so much money? And she said, well, it's to instill respect. Because if you don't pay a lot of money, you wouldn't respect the master level. And I think to myself, well, I respect things because of what they are. I don't have to pay a lot of money, but I never thought I would be a Reiki master. But anyway, I was saying my prayer, but she said, it will guide you. So I said my prayer for guidance. I go all the way back to Detroit. And then I learned how to teach. I learned how to write. And the next thing is I hear this rumor, someone's teaching the master level of Reiki for $500. Now, at first I'm thinking, it can't be the real Reiki because it's supposed to be $10,000. But I talked to the teacher, I go over and talk to her, and she says, oh, no, it's the real Reiki. And she explains the lineage. It was Takata, Iris Ishikuro, and Arthur Robertson. And her, it was a direct lineage back to Takata. It was the authentic Reiki. It was $500.
Yeah. Okay.
So I thought, okay, I'm doing it. So then in March of 1989, I became a Reiki master. At that point, I reflected back on what had happened. I could see I moved. I learned how to teach. I learned how to write. And I had a background in healing. And now I'm a Reiki master at $500. Now, most people were charging $10,000 for master. So I thought I got a good deal going here. So then I started teaching first level 1, level 2, and then eventually master. And because I was a writer, I would write in the local paper about Reiki. And then that paper was going out to other parts of the U.S. So people started calling me. And I started getting invitations to travel and teach. And then what I did was, at that time, they said Reiki is an oral tradition.
Yeah.
And there should be nothing in writing. Yeah. No notes, no workbook, nothing.
Yeah.
And so I talked to some people about that, and they said, I took Reiki, but it was an oral tradition. And they said they didn't practice because they couldn't remember how to do it. And so I thought, well, what do I want to do? Collect money from people and they take the workshop and I do okay, but they never practice. I thought, no, I want to, help them. So I thought I'm going to write the best workbook I can write and give it to my students. and help them to practice and be really good at doing Reiki. So I did that. I wrote it up and had it printed, and that workbook worked really well. Oh. And so then I sent one out to a bookstore and to see what the guy thought of it. And I called him on the phone and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Oh, send me more, send me more. I can sell these." And he said, "There's nothing in writing about Reiki, but I have people coming in all the time to my bookstore wanting something about Reiki and this workbook." And I said, "But it's just a photocopy. It's not anything special." He says, "It doesn't matter. Send me copies. I can sell them." So I started sending my manuals to him, and he started selling them. And I thought, well, I'll try other stores. And pretty soon it was selling like crazy. And then what I did was close to where I live, there were professional book manufacturing companies. And I wanted it not to be a Xerox copy, but be a professionally made book. So I went there and they told me what to do and how to get it set up. So then I put it together like that. And I got an artist also. In the Tony Robbins workshop, I met this artist, and she was very good at illustrating. And so she helped me put together my book, the drawings and everything. And so I had it printed, and that workbook did really well. And I had 3,000 copies.
It was one of the first books in Reiki, right?
Yeah. Yeah, here it is. This is...
we are translating it in French. And people like that in French, and they're very happy. Okay, it's the first version. Amazing. Which years? It was...
That was 1991. Oh, 1991, yeah.
I was 7 years old. I was 7 years old.
Yeah, came out with it. Yeah. And so then this took off, and people, I was selling it. And I thought, wow, I'm making money from just selling the book. And then I moved from living with the other guys in their house with a friend of mine to an apartment, and then into this house. So the house I'm in right now, I moved in 93. I'm still here. And so in this house, there was enough room for me to teach classes and also store my books in the garage. And so I got my business going here. Eventually got a place of business, which I still have. I started that at 98. I still have the same place. And employees. And so the whole thing just got bigger. And then my workbook was like my calling card, and people would get the book and want to know, because I wrote this to be a book to explain what Reiki is, as well as to be a workbook for people that take the class. So people would read it and they would call me and want to know if I would come to their city and teach a class. And so I said, yeah. So I started traveling. First, I went to Canada. I went down to the Caribbean, to Albuquerque, New Mexico, but then eventually all over the whole country. My business just expanded because of this manual. So, and then eventually, I got this house, and it was, what I thought was, why should I stay in Detroit? I could live anywhere. So I was wondering, should I rent a house or buy a house? Now, I was working with a clairvoyant person. Now, one of the things, the kahuna told me two things that were really important. He said, first of all, if you can always have a clairvoyant healer you work with, that will help you do a lot better, because they can see things in your aura that you can't see, and they can help you heal more deeply than you would normally be able to heal. Okay. And he said also, the other thing would be, is that he studied with 9 other kahunas. And he said the kahuna is always learning, always learning. So I thought, I want to do that with Reiki. So I also began studying with other masters, not just the first one. The first one was Diane McCumber. But I started studying with other masters, and it expanded my overall knowledge. Although the core parts were the same, each one was doing things a little differently. So I learned more and more and more and more. And, I had my workbook, and so that it greatly expanded my knowledge. And my business became very successful, and my income started going up. And I began traveling, like I say, all over the place. And then I also started the Center Certified Teacher organization, because I was getting more students than I could handle. Okay. And I was giving to other people, but I realized, well, I don't know if they're very good at teaching or not.
Uh-huh.
So I thought, I'm going to start my own training program for teachers, and it was the Center Certified Teacher Program.
One
And
of your licensed Reiki master teacher is one of my friends. He lives in France. It's Yannick. Yeah, so hi to him. Yeah, I've got a friend that
great.
is finishing this training with you and your team. Chers téléspectateurs, merci d'avoir regardé cette interview jusqu'ici. C'est une interview en 3 parties. Dans la prochaine version, le prochain épisode de cette interview de William Lee Rand, William va nous parler du Reiki KARUNA, du Reiki Holy Fire et de la grille de cristaux Reiki pour la paix mondiale. Je t'invite donc à t'abonner en cliquant dans le lien sous la vidéo et à très bientôt pour de prochaines vidéos sur le même thème.